Welcome.
And that's how the greatest Easter egg in computer gaming was produced.
Pitfall, not Puppyfall. Oh, hello Chip Dippers. Welcome to another Quick Bites retro recipe without all the bells and whistles. Thank you. Now, if you're wondering why we're playing the Ghostbusters music and why she's playing along to it, this isn't another Ghostbusters video, but you might remember that recent one, How Did Ghostbusters Know Your Bank Account Balance? First, for the 137 of you that did ask, no, I didn't mean a real bank account. Sorry about that. But I did receive a very interesting comment under that video from one Noah Fregger, who claimed that his grandfather worked with David Crane on that game. Yeah, right. Well, yeah, right. Because the next thing I know, I'm emailing Grandpa Fregger, better known as Brad Fregger,
Hello.
and he's telling me all about various things, including a fascinating Pitfall Easter egg in the sequel to Pitfall, Pitfall 2.
It's you and Pitfall herring together again.
Rhonda! She must be dead! Oh, electric heels! Condors! Oh,
Pitfall 2, Lost Caverns. Explore David Crane's newest from Activision.
New Freedom Sim Maxi Pack.
Sorry. Back to Ladyfractic. Allegedly, as his story goes, hidden inside Pitfall 2 is an entire other game, and nobody talked about it, and they didn't even announce it for legal reasons that we'll get to in a moment. Please don't sue me, Activision. Thank you. But yeah, apparently inside Pitfall 2 Lost Caverns, there are real lost caverns. So, who are you going to call? Well, more like who am I going to Zoom? Because later that day, I found myself on a Zoom call with Brad Fregger himself, where he revealed this.
You know people who have played card solitaire on the computer.
Probably me and everyone I know, yes.
I'm the inventor.
Not only that, but I also asked him why Activision had removed his name from the Ghostbusters packaging, meaning that sadly he never got his producer credit.
It was a management decision that they didn't want to make the decision that producers would gain packaging credit.
Well, even though internally his official role was Creative Development Manager, 2 years later, someone at Activision clearly thought producer sounded more showbiz and finally gave him that production credit on the box. Wow, and you like to play solitaire, don't you? Yes, especially with me. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Well, either way, after this video, you can check out the full half-hour interview with Brad Fregger. It's available exclusively to Patreons and YouTube channel members on the early access tiers. But would I leave you hanging like Pitfall Harry himself? Hanging on a rope? Well, of course not. Moving on. So first it's important to set the scene. Pitfall 2 was of course the sequel, rather surprisingly, to Pitfall 1, David Crane's groundbreaking game for the Atari 2600, aka the Atari VCS. And it was inspired by Indiana Jones, around that time that film came out, and a little bit of Tarzan. Exactly. And it not only set the scene for Mario and other platformers like ones we even still play today, but it was the first game to feature a fluidly animated human character.
I started studying the human figure, creating animations. I would walk around the design lab and freeze and sketch the position that my legs are in. And then I would go over to the Atari 2600 and try to figure out how to do that with only 8 pixels to work with. But I ended up creating a little running man.
But for this video, it's important to first remember that Pitfall employed David Crane's incredible method of squeezing 256 screens or levels into just 4 kilobytes on the cartridge ROM. That's the equivalent of, well, a 16th of the Commodore 64's RAM, or just a couple of pages of text in a book. Now, just how he did that is actually worthy of an entire video of its own, which funnily enough is coming soon on this channel. But either way, Pitfall 1 and Pitfall 2 were just cemented in history and even featuring in the Art of Video Games exhibit at the Smithsonian Museum. Which doesn't like art. So on with our story, Pitfall 2 was one of the last games to be published on the Atari VCS, but it was also one of the most impressive. It employed David Crane's custom display processor chip on the cartridge itself, and this gave the Atari VCS enhanced graphics and music. But here's where the story gets super interesting, as Brad himself told me. Picture it. Cupertino, California, 1984. Activision headquarters. David Crane is finishing up his Pitfall 2 code on the Atari VCS with barely a byte to spare. But sitting either side of him are Tim Schotter and Mike Lorenzen, working on the Commodore 64 and Atari 8-bit ports of the game for the Atari 800 and 5200. And so suddenly, a game that had to fit into just 4 kilobytes on the VCS had 48 to 64 kilobytes of RAM to play with on the other two systems. Tim's plan is to give the C64 version the most incredible graphics with all the extra RAM, although his version took a bit longer because it was a ground-up rewrite for the Commodore. But as the 8-bit Atari's graphics chips aren't really much better than the VCS, instead of amazing graphics, Mike's plan is to give the Atari 8-bit version a whole other game within the game. When you finish the VCS version of the levels, the door will open up, there's an entire second game. And Mike has a whole month to do this in, because his version was a quicker direct conversion based on the VCS's original game code. And so Mike brings in a sleeping bag and literally lives in his office for that month, spending up to 20 hours a day completing his extra game. Sounds fun, like a little camping trip, but in reality it almost kills him. At one point, an ambulance is called for Mike, dehydration. But he soldiers on, drinking lots of water, which might explain all those swimming levels. So then Brad goes to the marketing department to share this amazing news. "You can't do that," they shriek. "We have to market the game features the same across all platforms. You have to strip the extra game out. No ifs, no buts." Brad is devastated. He goes back to the programmers and, well, I'll let him tell you what he said.
Then I had an idea, and I get back to the office, and I tell him how excited about the new graphics. I said, "I got bad news and good news." He says, "Well, what's the bad news?" Well, the bad news is marketing tells us we have to rip your game out, that they have to have the same gameplay. Oh my God! You can imagine the devastation. And he said, "What's the good news?" I said, "We're going to have the best goddamn Easter egg you ever saw." And that's how the greatest Easter egg in computer gaming was produced.
Now, before the end of our story, I should warn you that PCBWay are absolutely terrible at making Easter eggs, but they're perfect if you want great quality PCBs from just $5. Because as we all know, PCB stands for Programmer's Camping Bed, doesn't it? Now, to unlock that level, you had to complete the perfect game, collect all the items like the ring, Rhonda, and Quick Claw, affectionately referred to as Scooby, and you had to collect all the treasure items in the right order.
Oh, that's right, Reggie. Yes.
I know, but just occasionally, Brad would get calls from the marketing department saying this.
We just got a call from a C64 customer. He said he was next door with his Atari 800 buddy, and he said they were playing a whole different game inside of Pitfall. He says, "What are they talking about?" I said, "Don't pay any attention to them. The graphics are just so different they get all confused."
I'm kind of jealous of those rare few that did discover it and then tease their Commodore 64 friends about it. Babe,
Yeah.
when I get out of the pool, do you want an Easter egg?
Ooh, chocolate?
No, it's Pitfall 2. When you get to the very end of the game, if you play it correctly, you get into this special secret level. Do you want to see it?
So no chocolate.
I've got you roses.
Aw.
Cadbury roses.
So chocolate roses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll be back soon with another delicious retro recipe. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe and support below. And cheerio. So do you think you've been forgiven by now by marketing?
Oh, they don't. I don't think they ever knew. I mean, I don't think the world ever knew.